I can't have the hubris of, well, they're not doing what I thought they were going to be doing. They're out of the will of God. Hey everyone, and welcome to Ascend the Hill. We today have a special edition of the podcast. We did one of these a few weeks back with our youth pastor, Pastor Curtis, and really it's just a leadership talk, a lead pastor, staff pastor talk, spiritual father, spiritual son talk. And if you fit into the category of working in the church, or you are in a position of spiritual influence, or you're somebody who feels a call to be an influence in the body of Christ, or to cross over into leadership in the body, then this is a podcast for you. And so Pastor A.T., our young adults pastor, is here with us, and I've known you for what year did we meet?
2014.
2014. Pastor A.T. was a student at camp that had a life-changing experience, and here we are all these years later, I guess, basically almost a decade now.
Almost 10 years.
Almost
June
10
will be
years.
10 years.
Pastor A.T. worked with me for 4 summers as one of our interns at camp. He was, I think he might be the only 4-year intern that we had, and it was just an awesome 4 years getting to know him and coming to observe him, watch him become everything that God intended for him to become. And right now he's killing it as our young adults pastor. We had a few young adults in our church when you came last June, but we have already seen that age demographic, 18 to 25, become an integral part of our congregation, which was our heart's desire.
Right.
Not a subgroup, but a part of the whole body that has influence, that has an effect on the spiritual trajectory and the ministry effectiveness of Cornerstone Church. And you have led the way in that, so thank you.
Hey, thank you for calling upon me and my wife. When we came in, we weren't sure what the next phase of leadership would look like, but it's just awesome to see now at this stage. I mean, we're almost a year in,
right?
Being here, which is insane to think about what the Lord has done in such a short amount of time, and we're just expecting what's to come.
Same here. Well, we can kind of dive into what we've come to talk about today. And just so everybody knows, I don't know what we're going to talk about. I told Pastor A.T., you're picking the topic, you're leading it. I want to be able to just respond naturally, spontaneously in the moment. But, I spent 10 years working as district youth director, investing my life in younger ministers, working as a resource, if you will, to local church pastoral staff. And now I'm the lead pastor of a church, and we have 25, 26 full-time employees, I think 11 pastoral staff. So I've kind of been thrust into not the resource on the outside role, but right in the middle of it. I'm learning on the fly, and I'm trying to pastor you, Pastor A.T., and lead you to the best of my ability. So I'm just trying to not mess you up. That's my goal. Don't mess this guy up. So what you got for us today?
Well, I actually wanted to almost do like a part 2 to your conversation with Pastor Curtis.
Okay.
Phenomenal podcast. I encourage everybody to go back and listen to it, because you guys talked about that dynamic with spiritual fathers and spiritual sons. But I had this one question. It might be a little bit more practical. Of course, in the natural, we have one father and one mother, right?
Yeah.
But in the spirit, are you able to have multiple spiritual fathers? There's many people that I can look back on in my life, Pastor Derek Robertson, so many other different people that have played such an incredible role in my life and my spiritual formation. But as a spiritual father, do you think that you can have multiple spiritual fathers?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that, in part because I have a sense of responsibility to you, and I don't want to manipulate in that responsibility, and I don't want to cross over into trying to be controlling of you. And so for me, I don't know that it's healthy that I'm the only voice in your life. But maybe what's more significant as it pertains to you is it would be pretty arrogant and disrespectful of me to be dismissive of the people God put in your life through the years,
Right.
that by the time you got to me, and are gifted, anointed, effective, capable in ministry, like I'm the beneficiary of the work of other people.
Right.
And so this season, you're on my staff. So I'm the spiritual authority in your life. You've chosen to come up under my authority. But you call him Pastor Derek Robertson or Pastor Ronnie Sanders or whoever's been in your life along the way, there shouldn't be anything in me that's insecure about that. There shouldn't be something in me that's that is offended by that. I think that would be a pretty big indictment on my capability of leading you well. If my soul is that unhealthy, that I can't take you acknowledging the influence and impact of somebody else, then I can't get you where you need to be because I got my own issues. And so, no, it doesn't. I don't think that's problematic. I do think, you get this, like you're on staff under me, like I'm the spiritual authority of this house. And so those relationships that you have need to like enhance the dynamic that you and I have, right? Because this is what you've chosen to submit to. My voice is the one that like you need to respond to predominantly because of the nature of the position you're in under my leadership. And so I think those other voices, though, are valuable because they can encourage you. They can challenge you. You maybe can, I never want it to be this way, but reality says it is. There may be things that you don't feel like you can come to me about that you need an outlet. My hope is that we have a healthy enough relationship that you can walk in my office and express any frustration, any fear, any disappointment, any hurt, that you could say all of that.
For sure.
And we're going to walk out of that office closer. And we're going to walk out of that office working on whatever it is. But in the event that you're not sure you can, I want you to have people that you can go to. So
100%.
So and I've been in those dynamics, and I've talked about that with Pastor Curtis, where there's this territorial mentality, like you're my son, spiritual son, like all other voices are irrelevant. And I think that is just an indictment on the Father, and I'll say in the natural, like I am my son's dad. I'm Kingston's dad.
Right.
But in part, being a good dad is acknowledging the value of other voices in his life that are helping lead him deeper into Christ and toward his purpose. I mean, I remember having barbecue with you one day and saying, my son is youth group age. I need your voice in his life. And then here, lo and behold, I mean, a couple years later, now you're working here, and you're a part of his life on the regular. But even as a biological natural father, I understood the importance of a multiplicity of voices in my own son's life.
That's good.
So as a spiritual father, I mean, all the more I should value that, not be insecure about it.
Right. And it just goes to show that everything in the kingdom is a continuum. There's an initial work that the Lord has done in our lives, but there's so many different factors. There's so many different filters. There's so many different voices that are so vital to us being built up as the men and women of God and being transformed by the renewing of our mind. Like we have so many different people that are so integral to that. And that's so good that you just mentioned that. But
well, let me say this. I know you got a question, but like I've been in environments where you had to be so loyal to, quote, the spiritual father that you almost had to like shun the people who had been formative in your life. Wow. Like you didn't feel like you could connect with them anymore, and I think that is, I think it's really sad. And I think about Pastor Derek Robertson. Like if I were to get that territorial about you, like how that would hurt his heart.
Right.
And I wouldn't want to do that to him. You know, I
Right.
wouldn't want to disrespect him that way. So anyway, go ahead.
It's so good. But this was a little bit more practical. This was actually a question that was asked from another young adult to me. And it was actually a pretty interesting question. But he asked, do you feel like that there's a time that you are the spiritual following? Do you feel like that there's ever a time that kind of stops, when there's a moment where it's like, you know what, maybe I don't necessarily need spiritual following anymore? Or can you kind of speak to that? Is like, when is where's the line that says that, you know what, I've have some maturation, I have some years of wisdom and knowledge under my belt.
Yeah.
So uh, how do you kind of go about something like that?
It's a outstanding question. And I think I touched on this some when Pastor Curtis and I talked. Um, you know, it seems like anytime you're talking about spiritual fathering, there are lessons, you know, you could see it in the natural, you know,
Right.
when you're parenting a kid, you can see some parallels. And I would say the nature of the relationship should change over time.
Mm.
Like there should be an evolution to the relationship. The relationship doesn't have to end as long as both parties are willing for the relationship to evolve.
Wow.
But if one person in the relationship wants the relationship to stay the same, you know, forever, then it's not a healthy relationship, and it
Mm.
doesn't need to last. Like, for instance, if you wanted me to always be the person that told you what to do and to give you permission, and then like at some point I should be over here going, like, this isn't working, because you should like be past that now.
Right.
On the flip side, like, if I always want to tell you what to do, you know, it's like at some point in you, it's like, I can do this on my own. So both
Right.
people have to be willing for the relationship to evolve. And as long as there's that willingness there, then it can be a lifelong relationship, you know. And I go back again to the natural. You know, in the beginning phases of raising a child, as the dad, like the kid's completely dependent on me. I'm feeding the kid, you know, I'm changing their mess, I'm taking care of them, all of
Yeah.
that. As they get older, I am equipping them with life skills. I am helping sharpen things that are good in them. I'm helping to like root out things that aren't good in
Right.
them. But there's going to come a point when my son is going to get done with all his education,
Mm.
and he's going to start making decisions about his life, and it's going to have to be his decisions.
Right.
And at that point, my role has changed.
Mm.
I'm counsel, you know, I can offer wisdom,
Right.
but my role really is like to cheer, to celebrate, to support, to encourage, to nurture the heart.
Mm.
But like, he's got to be grown enough to do it on his own, right? That's kind of where you get. And there will be a point, you know, in our dynamic where, you know, and I don't know who's helping who the most at this point, you know, but you'll be developed to the degree that, like, the role you really need for me to be in your life is to come up and hug you and say, you're killing it, and I celebrate you, and thank you for helping me
Yeah.
do the things. Thank you that you've grown to the point that you're helping me do the things that God's put in my heart.
Right.
So yes, I think it can be a lifelong relationship, but the relationship has to evolve.
Right. It's almost like the eagle analogy, right? And you know, you have your nest years, and then it seems on the surface, it seems so like mean that the eagle will come in and it's like, all right, push the little eaglet out.
Yeah.
But no, it's like you need that person. And as you're talking about that evolution of the relationship, you need that person to almost like, all right, it's time, like, you've got the potential, you've got these things in
Yeah.
you. And almost like what you and Pastor Carter's talked about, the spiritual father and spiritual mother, you see something in them that possibly they don't see in themselves.
Yeah.
And you're saying, all right, it's time for you to fly now.
Yeah.
It's time for you. Hey, you're always going to have a spot back, you know,
Yeah.
to come back, fellowship, dine, and encouragement. This will be a soft place for you to land. However, like, you can, it's time for you to fly now. So,
Well, I think I mean, like, a lot of times what you see, like the beginning phases of the spiritual father, spiritual son, spiritual daughter, spiritual mother relationship is the father mother is like the guru. They're the accomplished one, they're the experienced one, and the son or daughter is like the baby bird that's just like, whatever you can give me, I take,
Right.
you
Right.
know. over time, it becomes more of a two-way conversation of helping each other. And then eventually it's like, you don't need me for that anymore.
Yeah.
Like, you have grown and matured to the point that you don't need me feeding you anymore.
Right.
Like, you're eating on your own, you're growing on you might have outgrown me.
Hey.
You know, and I need to be able to let you outgrow me.
Yeah.
And that's why I say, like, there has to be a willingness for the relationship to change of, you've outgrown the need for me to be the guru, to be the expert, to be the advisor, to be the mentor. You've kind of outgrown that. Like, now what you need for me to be is cheerleader, encourager, you know, somebody that can like be a sounding board, that can help you perceive things. And so that's, I don't want to always be the guru in your life.
Wow.
You know, that if I want that, again, that goes back to, there's something in me insecure that's going to hold you back.
Wow. Well, that's so good. So, let's see. How would you navigate the balance between like a careful spiritual fathering and really allowing someone, you know, for example, like me, to make my own mistakes?
Yeah.
Like, how do you navigate that balance within yourself? Is like, okay, I really need AT to like kind of learn from whatever consequences may or may not come.
Yeah.
Versus, okay, I probably need to pull the reins back on some of the things that maybe you want to, you know, accomplish, or you want to see, or you want to do.
I'll just candidly, I don't know that I could speak definitively on that.
Wow.
You know, we're in that right now, you know, and I'm trying to figure some of that out. I mean, I'm again, bro, I keep referring to raising my son, raising my daughter. I'm trying to figure that out with them. You know, we just hit 14 years with the boy. And we had a conversation last weekend of like, man, I got 4 years to prepare you to be a grown up. So the dynamic of our relationship's going to have to change. I'm going to have to empower you to make some decisions on your own. I'm going to have to let you like struggle in some areas. I told him these things because I'm realizing like we're at the point where that's got to happen. You know, and there's a difference between protecting and controlling. Mm-hmm. And I think when you care about somebody, you're always going to have this protective inclination in you. I'll probably always with you have a desire to protect you. But at the same time, I fully and completely recognize that the best way to grow and learn is to make decisions, lead, and deal with like the result of those decisions and leading and learn from that. Right. And so I don't know fully how to do that with you yet. That's a new thing, you know, of what I don't want to do is I don't want to end up dictating everything you do. Right. Because then I'm stunting your growth. I don't have time for that. You know, what am I doing? You know, if I'm trying to tell you every, you know, thing that you need to do, like I got to let you lead. I got to let you make decisions. I've got to let you step out and try things. And maybe at this point, it's less about me being preventative and more about in the aftermath, what did we learn? Right. You know, okay, that's what we did. What are the lessons we learned? Mm-hmm. You know, hey, that didn't go well. Okay, why? What did you learn from it? Let's grow from it. Let's not like double down and do it again, you know? And then on the flip side, hey, you made that decision. It went well. What'd you learn from it? Right. And so I don't know if I'm doing a good job at that or not. You know, you'd be able to speak to that better than I can, but it's an outstanding question. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a question that whether you call yourself a spiritual father, spiritual mother or not, like if you're a pastor leading a staff, that is the tension of I can see a mistake's coming. Now there's like degrees of mistakes. Right. There's moral mistakes. There's like major mistakes that are going to do damage to people and cause problems, or that's not going to work. Right. Or that's going to make things complicated for you, or that's going to create some issues. Those are different categories. If I see
if it's an immoral decision, I'm like, absolutely not.
or if it's like going to create a lot of pain, you know, in somebody, or if it's going to create a lot of friction in the congregation or whatever, then yeah, I need to step in there.
Right.
But if it's like you're leading your ministry and you're like, I want to do this, well, you are way more immersed in your ministry and the people you're working with than I am. So I probably need to like trust your observation, trust what you feel is best for that group, and let you try it, and then see what we learn. Even if there's in me like I don't know if I'd do that or whatever.
Right.
Well, I'm not you, you're not me.
Right.
So anyway, those are things I'm trying to learn too.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm leading. I think I've already alluded to it. Maybe I haven't in this particular podcast. I mean, we have a staff of over 25 full-time people. I'm 18 months into that, so I'm learning.
Hey, I'd say you're killing it. I mean,
well, I appreciate that.
Podcast.
Listen, this
I'd
man
say
over
you're
here,
killing it.
he over here trying to catch a raise or something.
Let's go. I'll always try to catch one of them. I'll have my net always open for that. No, but this is a little bit more of a practical, perhaps. How do you approach diversity of beliefs and practices among those that you spiritually father? Maybe not so much like things that are like immoral or wrong, like just flat out wrong. But maybe that's like an extension of the question I just asked of like, how do you kind of go about like maybe someone else who's grown up in and or been spiritually fathered under different leadership that maybe like is day and night from you? How do you kind of go about those situations?
It's a great question. And I think you have to define the context. Like if the context is you are working, for me, on my staff, under my authority, like that's one context versus we have a relationship, but you are serving somewhere else, you're doing something elsewhere. Like if you are elsewhere, that's really easy. I see who you are. I don't need you to be anything other than who you are, right?
Right.
If you are working under this context, there's a vision of the house. There is a spiritual DNA of the house. There's a trajectory that we're on and where we're leading the church by the help of the Holy Spirit. And I need you to not be incongruent with that, right? Like I need whatever I tend to reproduce out of me, it probably needs to be the same type of thing that is reproduced out of you. But now, I mean, on our staff, we have very different personality types. We have very different, philosophical approaches, at least as we've come together. And now that's part of my mission in leading this team is to sync up our philosophical approach, to sync up our DNA, to get everybody that maybe has been doing it this way and that way and with this emphasis and that focus to now come under one emphasis, one focus, one philosophy, one DNA, so that we can be a healthy church and not create fractions and schisms, right?
Right.
So if you're here, like I need you to catch my heart and be pretty similar,
right.
And when I say that, like, that doesn't mean personality wise.
Right.
I mean, you're a Enneagram 7. I'm an Enneagram 3. Like you don't have to become what I am, right? In that regard, but you have to like know where we're going and work to get in that same direction.
Right.
But 100%, I've got people in different parts of the state, different parts of the country that feel that my influence is important to them. And, my role in their life, if they're not here, is to say, okay, like, who are you? Are you a fit where you are? Just to kind of help them process those things.
Interesting.
And so I don't, what you don't want to do, and this is the other difficulty, like you don't want to create a bunch of mini-me's.
Right.
And I've been in those settings where you have the lead person, and they wear a certain type of shirt, and next news everybody's got the same shirt on. They grow a beard, everybody grows a beard.
Yeah.
You see all of that stuff, and it's just like that's a little weird. And I think honestly, it speaks more to the insecurity of the sons and daughters of like, why do you think you have to conform to that degree?
Right.
Like, just catch the heart.
Right.
Don't Like, don't change your wardrobe, don't.
That made me think of camp that one year whenever I got like this similar bandana that you had,
Uh-huh.
and I was just like that was just like my first thought. I was like, that's hilarious.
Well, but that,
That's good.
that is a part of it. Like that,
Right.
I think that's a phase.
Right.
Just like, again, my gosh, we keep going to parenting. There's a
Right.
phase where your kid wants to wear what you wear. They want to look. That is a phase of
Mhm.
mimicry.
Yeah.
I'm gonna talk and it's gonna sound like you.
Right.
But like that, you should grow out of that. Like you
sure.
preach and I preach. Like if I preach one Wednesday, you preach one Wednesday, you preach to Sunday. Like you have your own way, you have your own style, you have your own personality, temperament, all of that.
Right.
But one thing that is feedback I get and I got from the Sunday you preached, we could still feel you here.
Wow.
Through Pastor AT.
Wow.
He sounded like you. And that doesn't mean like in intonation, inflection, mannerisms. It means like the heart, like
Right.
the things that matter. The DNA came through you,
Right.
even though we would do it a little different. I'm not calling everybody precious, but you do. And I love you for
Right.
it. It comes out differently, but I mean, numerous people said, it was familiar, and there should be, even though there's difference, there should be that familiarity.
Right. Oh, well, this is like one of the last questions that I
Yeah.
really have is that in you, what is the response if you see a spiritual son or daughter that not necessarily, falling away from the Lord, but more of a, let me just kind of break it down a little bit more
Yeah.
simply. What is your response when you see a spiritual son or daughter go into a field or go into a work that you never would have exactly thought that they would have?
Yeah.
So, for example, if you see something and somebody's like, man, that's a heavy and that's a deep pastoral gifting and calling on their life, and they're going through this process with you, but then they're in something like retail or something like that. So, what's the balance with that? Because I mean, we speak a lot here, and I think you just recently preached on Sunday, is that no matter where you are, as long as you got righteousness, peace, and joy, like that's where the kingdom of God. Like we're all called to minister. So, what is your response to that? If you exactly see a spiritual son or daughter just go off into a field that you didn't expect.
Well, my response to that is I'm not the Lord.
Right.
And I need to understand that like my responsibilities and what I know about a person and what I know about God's plans for them are still very limited, no matter how much I know them or how much I think. And so I can't have the hubris of, well, they're not doing what I thought they were going to be doing. They're out of the will of God. There have been times when I've seen people, it's like, that's not good. There have been times I've warned people, that's probably not going to end well. But I also have just tried to take the position of, I'll share with you what I perceive. I'll share my perspective, but you have to stand before the Lord.
Right.
I can't stand there with you, and I can't answer for you. And like you and God are going to have to work this out. Like that's part of, I'm not trying to dictate every term in your life. I'm trying to help you walk this out with the Lord. And so I try to be, and I can't really recall many times that I looked at somebody and thought they're just not doing, like I'm disappointed in where they ended up. Like I don't really, I think because of how I view my role.
Right.
Like ultimately they belong to the Lord, not me.
Right.
They have to work it out with him. And I've had ebb and flow with, people, sons and daughters in the faith through the years where there'll be a stretch where we don't really talk much because I can feel them pulling away or they don't necessarily want to hear what I got to say. It's kind of not where they are in life. And I've learned in that, like to accept that, to accept those seasons. I've also watched so many that will go through a year or two where there's a drift and it'll come back, and we'll kind of reconnect and reunite. Uh, but I think it's I have I have a fear of the Lord, a reverence of the Lord, in that um, I'm really guarded about telling somebody what to do
Right.
with their life. I mean, they're going to have to work that out with the Lord.
Right.
They're going to have to answer to Him, and they'll have to answer to Him if they did the wrong thing, you know.
Mm.
But I don't want to have to answer to the Lord for pushing somebody to do the wrong thing.
Man.
And so it's kind of like I can give you my perspective, but like it's up to you. Like I don't want to push you somewhere that you maybe weren't supposed to go because I'm limited in my understanding.
Right.
Right.
All right. I always get uncomfortable whenever I hear people just flat out be like, "You're called to do this."
Oh, yeah.
That gets weird. That can get really really murky. But that's all I really have as
Okay.
far as questions are
These are
concerned.
good questions.
Yeah.
I loved it. Like, so how many of these questions are like, where did these come from? I'm curious.
I have no idea. These are just honestly like inwardly. I mean, a lot of it had to do again with the podcast. And these are honestly just like in the car conversations with the Lord, just like it'd be interesting to talk about. So
Yeah. No, these are really good questions. Like you ask great questions. And my hope is that, any of my pastor friends that have staff pastors, hopefully, you'll come across it and you'll find some nugget that's helpful. I mean, I'm not a guru. I've only been doing it 18 months, but I mean, I've spent 25 years in ministry working with people, and I've spent 10 years working with people with a call to ministry on their life that are serving in staff roles, lead pastor roles. And before that, I mean, I traveled all over the country. I've traveled all over the place working with ministers, having meals with ministers. And so I do feel like I'm pretty experienced and can speak, confidently in these areas, in part because it's because I haven't been in I don't mean this negatively, but that's the only way I know to articulate it, the cocoon of this local church for this long. Like I've been in so many other settings that I feel like I can help. And, and I hope I'm doing a good job with our team. You want to create an atmosphere where where your team can grow. You want to create an atmosphere where they can have peace, but they can have also this like sense of purpose and passion and ambition, like striking the balance between stoking passion and drive and let's swing for the fences, but at the same time, peace and security that like you're going to be okay, trying to hold those tensions. So anyway, and I would just encourage, I did it in the last podcast, anybody that is older in ministry, and I think at this point at 45, maybe I'm getting to that spot, and you're working with someone younger in ministry, those that are younger in ministry, rightfully so, crave the voice of someone older as a voice of affirmation, a voice of encouragement, a voice of affection, a voice of wisdom. And so you need to understand that. And for those on the older side, you need to be proactive in pursuing that with younger ministers, and it'll add years of vitality to you. Like it'll young you up. You and Pastor Curtis are younging me up. I know I'm 45. I'm not old. Like I got the gray hairs, but I'm not old. Right. But even y'all being on the team, there are conversations I'm inviting y'all in on right now, and there's going to be more that I invite you two in on, because I know that I'm getting to a season in life, and I need your youth and your perspective from your generation to make sure that we're balanced, to make sure that we're better across the board. So anyway, that's all I got. You got any final thought?
Well, final thought is that I want to challenge any spiritual son or daughter out there. Get the phone out this week and just message your spiritual father or mother. Just tell them how grateful you are in their life. And I mean, we alluded to it earlier. June will be 10 years since I've been in this life with Jesus and this walk with the Lord. And of course, like he knew my years before then. He's protected me in situations and circumstances, even when I didn't see it.
Yeah.
But just get the phone out and just say just how grateful you are. I'm grateful for your voice in my life, and that you seen something to me whenever I was just a kid in the crowd trying to figure out what in the world is going on, because everybody's
Well,
shouting and
I
jumping.
couldn't miss you. You brought me that painting that time.
It was awesome.
You remember that painting?
I do remember.
You remember that? I didn't even know who this kid was. He comes up and gives me a painting. I'm like, who's this Antonio Gatlin kid? I asked Pastor Derek Robertson, and away we go.
Right.
And so, well, I love you, and thank you for listening to us in the Hill. If this benefited you, share it with somebody else that might benefit them. All right, that's all we got.